Today we'll discuss the implication of TDS on our daily transactions. So we are just selecting certain transactions pertaining to the expenses which is incorporated in the profit and loss accounts. Now regarding TDS, one thing you should be very clear. TDS we deduct on purchase of services, not on purchase of goods, except in one case that we will discuss later. For the time being, you just keep it in your mind. We are required to deduct tax at source on purchase of certain services. What are the services that we have just captured here? First is the salary. Salary means the service what we are purchasing from our employee. Then rent, the service means that we are occupying the office space, consultancy, right? Machine repair. So these are the various services, and this figure is in thousands. So when we are making payment salary to our employee, first we have to find it out that what will be the tax rate for TDS. So for TDS we need two things in our mind. First is that to whom we are paying. Am I paying it to the non-corporate entity? That means the individual, HUA, partnership firm, or I am paying it to the corporate entity. Because my rate of tax depends upon whether it is in respect of the non-corporate entity or the corporate entity. There are various provisions of TDS, but being an accountant, there are most frequently used certain sections which you need to keep in your mind by heart. Specifically, you can keep these sections in your workstations also. What are the sections? That is the section 192. This section is applicable when we make payment on account of salary. So section 192 will tell us that how much tax we have to deduct it while we will pay the salary. Section 194 will be applicable when we make payment of rent. So rent again two types, rent for office and rent for machine. So TDS rate for office will be different from rate for machine. So when we will see the rate as an accountant, we need to find it out. This rate is for what purpose? Because my TDS rate will be different. So when we will make the payment of rate, we will deduct the TDS as prescribed under section 194I. When we appoint any contractor for some repair job, then also we are required to deduct TDS, and at that time we are required to apply section 194C, and this 194C again, this rate will be different if I make payment to an individual or HF, or if I make payment to others. So if I appoint a contractor and take some services from that contractor, then I need to find it out whether the contractor is an individual or HF or others. Accordingly, we have to apply the TDS rate to deduct the TDS. Same thing for 194J. When we will make any payment to the professionals, which is normally captured in accounts as a consultancy fees. Then we have to deduct TDS as per the provision provided under section 194J. But here one thing we need to keep in your mind, that whether I am paying to the consultant for technical consultancy or non-technical consultancy. If I pay to the professionals for technical consultancy, then I have to deduct TDS at the rate 2%. But if I make payment to the professional for non-technical consultancy, then I have to deduct TDS at 10%. So, being an accountant, we have to go beyond the bill, because you will get a bill from a consultant. Now you need to ascertain what types of service consultant has rendered, whether he has rendered the technical service or non-technical service. For that you have to see what is the agreement, what is the purchase order. From study of agreement and the study of purchase order, you will be able to understand whether the service is in the nature of a technical consultancy or whether the service is in the nature of a non-technical consultancy. Accordingly, you need to decide the rate of taxation. Now, let's take one by one. So, when we have to deduct TDS, then we need to prepare one table. That table, you see that there will be 4 columns. First is the price of the supply. What is the price of the supply? In case of salary, the price of the supply is 400 rupees. Right? So the price of the supply is 400 rupees. Now, on salary, there will be no GST. So why no GST? When GST will be applicable, that we will discuss in detail when you will do the GST class. Now, on this salary, what will be the rate of TDS? For salary, the rate of TDS will be as per the slab. So for salary, the rate will be as per the slab rate. Rate will be as per the slab rate. So what is slab rate? So this you will understand when you will study the computation of income tax. In computation of income tax, you will find that rate of taxation depends upon the total income. So as per the total income of the employee, we will apply the rate of tax to decide how much TDS is required to be deducted. मान लो, for this case, the rate of TDS is 30%. Suppose this is a 30%. So the tax is required to be deducted is 30% of 400. So which is 120. So what will be the paycheck? How much is required to be credited to the employee's account? This is the employee's salary. This is the tax to be deducted from employee's salary. So net amount will be 1 plus 2 minus 3. There is no GST, so it is 0. So here 400 minus 120. So 400 minus 120 is basically your 280. So I have to pay to my employees 280 after deducting the TDS 120. So this 280 will go to the bank account of the employee, and this 120 I have to deposit it to the government as tax deducted at source. So how we will deposit, what will be the return, that we will discuss when we will go into the TDS compliance aspects. For the time being, we are interested to know that how I will capture this transaction in our books of accounts. So in my books of accounts, that salary account, this salary, so my salary expenses is 400, right? So my salary account will be debited. So my accounting entry will be salary account debit 400 rupees, then to TDS. So this TDS is my liability. I have to deposit to the government, to TDS 120, and after deducting TDS, the net amount I have to pay to the employee in their bank account. So that is 280. So that should be our accounting entry to capture that things. So what we will get? This TDS is my liability appearing, and this TDS, what we have discussed in the last class, that we need to deposit the TDS by 7th of the subsequent month when we have made the payment of the salary. So if we made the payment of salary on 30th April, then by 7th of May we have to deposit this TDS to the government. So by 7th of May, when we will deposit this TDS, 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 that is May 7, 2020, our entry, the entry what will pass in your books of accounts will be TDS account debit 120 to bank 120, because this TDS we need to deposit to the government. So you see, I have paid total 400. Out of 400, 280 I have paid to the employee and 120 I have paid to the government on account of TDS. This tax is not my tax. This tax is my employee's tax. So when they will compute their tax return, they will claim the credit of that TDS. How they will claim, that we will discuss when we will do the computation of income tax and payment of the tax.